interviewing Grosvenor Calkins Jr. on March 14th, 1988. Now, Mr. Calkins, could you tell us a little bit about your early life?
Can that be heard from there?
That's fine.
Oh.
That's fine.
Well, my early life was spent in Newton, and some of the features of it were I was always had an interest in music, and in my early years I would run the water in the tub at home, and then I would listen to, what I would do would be to put in little bowls and things, and I was fascinated by the various pitches, and I would take a little pencil or so and tap the various bowls that were in the tub to see, and I would try and make little tunes of what I heard, you know. And the musical interest has always been with me, and so I began with local teachers. However, I found that I wasn't getting what I wanted out of the instruction I was receiving. And finally, later on, I went to a friend that I considered an excellent teacher and thought that he would be just the right type for me. So,
What age were you around this time?
well, I was quite well along. I'm not what my present age is, but I would say that was about 1935 or something around in there. I'd had previous instruction from various teachers, but no one that I found would be able to figure out what I needed. And so he said, well, he thought he could find out in about 10 different lessons. So about that time, I asked him if he had figured it out. He said, yes. He said, from what I see, you have learned practically nothing from the instruction you received, and I was sure there was something wrong. And so he said, we will go back to the very days when you first started lessons. And he said, you are a person who, like a person when you plug in a cord in the wall, sometimes the thing doesn't work. I mean, when you try to plug in a lamp, we'll say, because the bulb is working. Well, he said that's just about what I feel that you need. You just don't have the proper foundation. Well, I went and worked with him for about 10 years, and now I feel quite confident, and all the work that I put into it was well worth it. So
Your emphasis on which instrument?
Piano and organ.
Oh, must be very satisfying. And what type of musical activity do you
What kind of music?
right now?
Well, I'm engaged in all kinds. On Sundays, I'm organist over at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in the South End, which I've been connected with since 1967. I went in June 1967 after finishing about 4 years at another Episcopal. Well, St. Stephen's is a mission, but this was another mission.
On what street in the South End?
On Sharman Avenue.
Sharman Ave.
Just across from Blackstone
Park, yes.
Right. And the people are very nice there, and I've always felt that, when you're
appreciated.
They're appreciated. If I didn't feel that way, then I probably would have moved on before, because I had several offers, but somehow I thought, well, the church is fairly convenient to where I'm. Well, even in Newton, it wasn't. It was quite a trip, but I didn't seem to mind that particular span. And where I'm staying now, of course, it's in the Back Bay. It's much easier. So that's why I remain where I have this length of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
well, that brings up another point of view about
my family, I come from a family of clergymen. I have a grandfather, and I looked it up just this morning to see. He was called from Buffalo, New York, to the Elliott Church right here in Newton Corner.
right here in Newton Corner.
And he was pastor from 1875 until 1890, which was 15 years. His name was Wolcott, W-O-L-C-O-T-T. And they lived up on Bellevue Street right here in Newton. And another one of my early experiences, I remember going over Saturday evenings and playing on their piano, which was a nice, quite well-tuned upright. And
That probably got you, inevitably interested.
yes. And now, during the week, I go in and play in nursing homes, and I do some, just to make people feel at ease, because, and especially in hospitals where people are, well, I notice when I go on the wards to play, we'll say at the VA medical center, that I go in and there's kind of an indifferent atmosphere when I go in. But then when I started to play, the reaction is much different. One day I remember I thought to myself, I'm going to play a few hymns and see what the reaction is. And that particular day there was one veteran, a patient who came up and he said, well, I think he even had a little tears in his eyes, and he said, he said, that brings back so many fond memories when I used to go to church, and I've lost track of it. But he said, do play some more hymns for me. And he sang the words along, That was really quite an experience.
Music as a healing tool, right? It's extraordinary.
And fortunately, I've been most of my time has been partial employment and partial volunteer time, so that I've been able to sort of correlate the two,
The ideal life.
And it's been a very pleasant experience. And I do something different most every day. It isn't like going into an office where you find the same people and the same faces and that kind of thing.
And the variety of music.
And a variety of music.
Now, would you range from classical to religious?
Yes, and then sometimes I even play popular,
Mm-hmm.
pop music, things like that.
Music, piano or organ arrangements?
Piano or organ arrangements.
Oh,
Right?
wonderful. It seems like a best of all possible world. Did you read that globe in, I don't know in what context, it said, popes and kings have less influence than troubadours.
Well, I forgot to go on with the background of clergymen in my family. I had an uncle who was Reverend Raymond Calkins, and he was pastor of the First Church Congregational in Cambridge for some time. And
That's
he was
Harvard Square?
Harvard Square.
Yeah.
And he retired about 1940, and then moved out to Belmont, where he remained until he passed away, but very active up until about a year before he passed on at the age of, I think he was 88. And my grandfather, by the way, Reverend Wolcott Calkins, who I mentioned, was 94.
Oh my. It's wise to know these things.
Then I had the dean of the Episcopal Theological School, as it was called then, was a cousin.
That's on Brattle Street, Cambridge.
Yes, Reverend Henry Washburn. And then somehow there was the Reverend Arthur Washburn also. He was I guess he was a cousin, and I think Dean Washburn, as he was the dean of Episcopal Theological School, was a cousin also.
Well, it looks as if your family and your ancestors provided a lot of talent to the churches.
And then I have a sister who married Reverend Edward T. Cook, or Reverend Edward H. Cook, but he had an unfortunate passing unexpectedly back in 1980, and so we lost him. He was only 59, and that was quite a shock to the family. It was came about at a family wedding which was taking place in a church in Hamburg, New York, in the Presbyterian Church, and I went on to play for the rehearsals in the wedding, and just as I arrived at the station, one of my nephews, Hugh Calkins, came up and he said, "I'm sorry to say that Reverend Edward T. Cook, your brother-in-law, was instantly killed on the New York State Highway." He and his wife, my sister, were planning to go to the wedding, so of course the wedding we had to put on as kind of a thing that we were happy with, but inside we weren't, you know. It was one of those very difficult things.
And you played on.
You
had to.
I had to play, and then the day after I was asked to go down and play for my brother-in-law's service. And the contrast between the two, and then when I got there, of course, everything was strange, and I didn't know anything about the church. I went in, had a brief try at the organ to see what it did, and so on, and then I must have played at least an hour or so for the people to come in the church. The church was jam-packed. We had all kinds of clergy in taking part in the service. It was all so strange, but somehow
full house.
It worked out all right.
That's another thing in Boston. We hear all about the organs and that unfortunate incident at the Immaculate Conception Church.
Oh, yes.
You must have played a lot of organs in Boston.
Well,
Tell me about some of them.
I have various times, yes. I've never really, I'm not what I call a recitalist, but I do appreciate, when I'm hearing organs, and I'm very much interested in seeing them and that kind of thing.
In restoration, you keep an eye on all these restoration events like that Christian Science one. Well, it had to have been
and then
15 years ago.
Recently, I had a very unusual experience. About 3 years ago, I guess it was, I contacted a radio station and I said I was much impressed by the friendliness of the station and that kind of thing. And the result was that I was invited to come down and sign the book. And now I'm appearing on a weekly radio program down there on WUMB-FM, University of Massachusetts. We have a program called As Young as You Feel for senior citizens. And I'm sort of the assistant person on the show, and
that's at Harbor Campus.
Harbor Campus. And Tony Cordoni he's a very experienced disc jockey, and he is in charge of it. And so I go down and read little messages that come along, and I usually bring down a weekly reading or something like that, you know.
In fact, I can get that quite easily in Dorchester, where I am.
Oh, yes, I was told you come from there.
Yeah.
Quite a trip on the T, too.
Well, this is one thing I want to get into with you now. Current transportation and past transportation. I'm capable of getting home now in half an hour.
Are you? Oh.
Yes. Now, that express bus on the turnpike can get me here in 10 minutes from South Station.
Yeah.
If Could you characterize a trip out of Newton Corner when you were a boy to, let's say, roughly something like South Station, and how much time it would take?
Oh, my.
What were your alternatives when you were a boy?
When I was a boy, as I recall it, there were very young, when I was very young, there was no such kind of transportation as we had, and I think they were sort of open trolleys, which...
Is this those tracks we see right now?
Yes. The tracks were discontinued in the year 1969. I remember standing beside a T stop, and a bus came along, somebody representing the T, and I was told that from now on we would be riding in on buses instead of the so-called streetcars.
Mm-hmm. Describe the old streetcars for me.
Well, the streetcars had a little bit different. That is, there would be the conductor, or the person who would engineer, do the driving, shall we say.
Were they the open-sided ones? I
Yes.
vaguely remember during the war.
And then there would be as you got on, you wouldn't get on the front of the car as we do now, but the center of it. And then there would be an operator standing there looking for your money, and then you drop it in the cash box and that kind of thing.
Okay, and they would take you towards?
They would take me towards, I think they would go as far as, they would go right into Park Street.
Okay. That would take you past Boston University, Kenmore Square.
That's right.
You descend at
That's right.
as usual. All right.
That's right.
And what do you think that total trip time would be?
Oh, that would take a little longer than the bus. I would say 25 minutes or so.
So people living
Roughly.
People living in Newton Corner did have access.
Yes.
Okay. And where did they do their shopping? You had quick access to Brighton Center.
Yeah.
And tell me about the configuration before the Turnpike. Was everything available here in a shopping area?
Oh, very much so. And there were all kinds of local shops and markets and things. And I think the Newton Corner was much more of a little community, not spread out the way it is now. And so some of the restaurants had disappeared that we used to have, and
I remember the movie theater in
the Paramount.
82.
Yeah. Paramount, of course, gone long since and lost a while, as that hymn goes. But and then there have been some changes in churches. The Channing Church was originally Unitarian, then it became Presbyterian later on. The Methodist Church closed on Center Street, and then...
and that's taken up by the Ashokas now?
Yes, it's sort of has a dome on the...
That's it, okay, the Ashoka.
Going up the hill,
Yeah.
Center Street.
And we have a seminary over there that's been here for a long time.
Yes, that's all new, too.
Oh, how long have they been here?
Oh, probably 15 years.
Swedenborgian. Do they occupy a building that was previous the other religious use, or?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this, but I have a feeling it might have been a private house that was made into the Swedenborgian. I've never been inside, but it always looked very, very comfortable and nice from the outside.
Well, it looks like Newton Corner has always attracted the religious communities.
And then a great thing happened back in 1968 when a radio station went on, which was called WNTN, and
that's Charlie Brennan.
Yes, that was when it first started. I noticed a great difference when I listened to WNTN now, because when it first went on the air, you could hear the sound of the trucks going along near the station and so on. kinds of street corners, street sounds you could hear, as you were listening. But that seems to be much improved now. I think the new management has taken it over, and I had the pleasure of meeting Sybil Contology. She has quite a...
Toncology, yeah.
Toncology, I guess it
That's
is.
right.
And she wants me to appear on one of her shows sometime, so perhaps in the spring I'll be.
They'd be very lucky to have you.
Well,
I think they try to vary their programming quite a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, I would be interested in knowing about earlier memories that you have, let's say, within your family, as far as your mother's activities.
Oh, Mother, well, she was very active in local affairs, and she made a point of calling on friends at the hospital, Newton Wellesley Hospital.
Well, she had children to raise. Were there several
Oh,
of
yes.
them?
I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. One brother passed away at a very early age in the time of the... there was some kind of an epidemic back in 1918.
Oh, influenza.
Influenza.
Who could ever forget that?
And I think that caused his passing. I think he would be probably 2 or 3 years younger than I am now if he had lived on. His name was Phillips. So there has been a sort of a break in my family. I have been more or less, well, of course, I'm single, and my family, most of the time, early years, was spent my own interests and hobbies and things like that, because I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and they would sort of pair off, and then they had their friends and one thing or another, but I had my hobbies. I was a very frail person and very insecure for quite some time, and I never knew exactly what was going on, and I had periods of indigestion and things like that. And it wasn't until my early 40s that I fortunately found a specialist, and went in and found out that I had what was called sprue, S-P-R-U-E. I don't know if you know.
I've heard of it, but I can't put a name to it.
Well, sprue means an allergy, allergic to flour.
Oh, my word.
And of course that was quite a blow in the sense that I was given a long list of diet restrictions. I was put on what is called a gluten-free diet, which means that everything I eat, I have to be sure that it's entirely free of flour. That was the thing that was causing all this trouble. And the flour causes internal poisoning. So
which restricts your activities immensely.
Yeah, and that's why I think that I was in such poor health for such a period of time.
You're working at a much less energy level.
The doctors didn't seem to know, the local doctor didn't seem to know. I mean, he didn't say that, but it wasn't and since that time, I'm like a new person, because
well, you certainly have a wide range of activities and scheduling more.
Oh, yes.
That's great.
Oh, yes.
It's wonderful how we all come into a certain time. It may be a different time and chronologically in each person's life,
Right.
but we do come into it,
That's
don't we?
right. That's right.
Now, with your mother, with all the children and everything, you said she did make a point of visiting friends in the hospital.
She did. She was a member of the Mother's Rest.
Which was?
The Mother's Rest. I don't know whether that still functions or not. And also she was a member of the Social Science Club, which I think is still going on.
And Those are old. Recognize the names as old time.
And then also, I think the Brownies. There was a girls' group, I think, that used to meet in Waltham. She'd go over there. And
Girl Scout cookies just came out today. You know, it's very appropriate. You know, a lot of these groups are in danger of petering out simply because there aren't the women with time to volunteer things. I know.
I was a member of the New England Spruce Society, which met 2 or 3 times a year, and that went out eventually because there was a woman, Mrs. McAllister, who gave untiringly of her time, and she found that her husband was ailing in health, so she had to devote more time to him, and she wasn't getting the support from volunteers that she needed, so she had to give the whole thing up, and that was too bad because
probably the society, as long as it lasted, at least made its impact, making people aware.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
And people are much more keen on allergies now, I think,
My
as a
father
possibility.
was a corporation lawyer, very successful, and he maintained his office at 30 Milk Street, and I remember sometimes he'd have little get-togethers with the family from time to time. He was a very unusual person. He would conduct seminars at the table, you know, and he would have us speak in French sometimes, you know, and then Sunday mornings when the family were all together, this is before my brother and sister were married and so on, we'd have little Bible readings and Bible stories after breakfast Sundays, and then around Christmas time he would read from Charles Dickens, Christmas stories and things like that, Christmas Carol, Dickens' Christmas Carol, things like that. So the family were quite together, if you get what I mean.
Yes, yes. You had 2 sisters?
2 sisters, Patricia, who married James Lightbody, who was a well-known Harvard University track star.
What year was he?
Oh boy. I'm just going to guess and say about 1940.
Okay, yeah.
That's just a guess. I can't quite remember all that. And then I have another sister, Patricia. Oh, she was the one who married James Lightbody. Then Anne married the Reverend Cook. And
yes, you had told us about that.
And then I have her brother Hugh, who lives in Cleveland, married Anne. And they have a family. And I have so many nephews and nieces I can hardly remember all their names.
So you were the last person who stayed the longest at Newton Corner, right?
That's right. That's right. And it was a very difficult time for me to move from Newton, which I had, of course, got to love during the time I was here.
But your base of activities was all over Greater Boston.
I tell you what I do. About 5 years ago, maybe 6 years, there was a notice that came, probably read in the Newton Graphic, about volunteers needed at the Newton Library here, so I went in, and each Tuesday I still continue to come in here and
You've been
do various typing.
Since that time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I know that particularly the Newton historical projects dealing with the Newton Room benefit greatly. We'll pause now.
Okay.
Now back to the interview. I'm going to ask you, Mr. Calkins, about what you remember about the old Newton Corner as far as old shops. Were there a lot of second-hand furniture shops, that type of thing?
Not so much shops as I remember at that time, but we did have, we had a local taxi stand, I remember.
Yeah.
There was a bridge that crossed Center Street just across, because that's all been taken
Yeah.
off. There were little things like that. There probably could have been, but I never I don't think I remember anything quite like that.
There have been a surprising number of old Victorians around here that look to remain intact.
Yes, I think so.
And as far as you know, quite a few old families probably still in the same houses.
Oh, I think so. One place I remember is the Marcy Estate up on Sargent Street up here in Newton. I don't know if you know where that is, but it's off Center Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether those people still own that place or not. And then there was the Toll Estate, which was on the corner of, Franklin Street and Waverly Avenue up there in Newton. And my mother purchased a home, or bought a lot, and we had a home there for about 23 years, which was right on the corner there. And that all changed. And,
How did it change?
well, the great big mansion was torn down and made into smaller houses, took the place of it, you know.
About what year was this?
Well, we moved into the house in 1956, so that was well before that time.
That was one of the smaller houses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that was when it was the great big mansion, and then the smaller houses the lot was split up into small. That's changed so.
I am particularly interested in neighborhood groups. They seem to proliferate in Newton. Do you remember any neighborhood self-help groups or whatever they were called back then?
I do remember two
Improvement
organizations that my father belonged to, and one was the Tuesday Club, which I've heard still is still functioning, and the Wednesday Night Club.
What were their goals?
Well, I think the Tuesday Club, they used to read. Somebody would prepare a paper, I think, and read that, and then the Wednesday Club, I think, was just sort of a general meeting, you know, and discuss things and current affairs and that kind of thing. And then there was the famous Night Club, spelled N-I-T-E, Club for Older People. Now, I don't know whether that exists or not, but my late mother and father would talk about that a lot, you know.
What was it?
It was a social kind of thing, and they would meet at different homes, and then they would attend functions and things like that. It was really...
And it was mostly Newton Corner oriented.
Yes, it was.
It looks like you had practical.
There were three things that I know that used to go on.
Interesting. Now, do you recall when the turnpike was proposed?
About 1964 came in.
Yeah. But what was the prior knowledge of it that let's say, the general public in Newton Corner had?
Very little. And as I understand it, the ones that were responsible for the turnpike were very ruthless. That is, they didn't give the people sufficient time, that's what we heard, to move out, you know. And it was kind of sort of a dictator kind of a rushing thing. Mm-hmm. That's what I gather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, where you were living was far enough from...
Oh, yes, we didn't get into that kind of thing at all, no.
It's interesting because here it is, a very obvious fact.
It's what people said split Newton in half, because before that took place, Newton Corner was just a quiet little village, you know, like we'll say Newton Highlands or something like that, and there's no turbulence running through, if you get what I mean.
The trolley was never considered disruptive?
No,
either.
oh no.
Nor the railroad line?
No, I don't think so, no. There's been a discussion for many years about whether it was better to have the buses go to Newton or the streetcars. And there's still quite an argument going on.
Oh yeah, that's current. There are the proponents that
Yeah.
trolleys are better
Yeah.
or worse. What do you think about the quality of life?
Quality?
Of life. It encompasses anything from what you consider cleaner air or less clean air, or the type of streets, the type of people.
I would say less clean air, and there has been talk about Boston being a city that needs to be cleaned out. I mean, as far as the, I don't know how to describe it, but just some kind of smog that hangs over the city. And,
Well, probably not as bad, but I noticed the difference immediately when I hit Newton Corner.
oh yes.
We are that far inland.
Mm-hmm. The
How
air.
do you think that has changed since the...
Well, I notice when I come out to Newton that the air seems to be much more refreshing than it is, we'll say, in Boston somehow.
And do you think it's the same as when you were a boy?
I would think so,
Oh,
yes.
that's good.
I'm a hay fever victim in the late summer, so that I have to keep my when I'm in my room, I have to keep the windows closed because all the pollen comes through, you know. But of course, I'm not the only one that has hay fever. But
It's interesting. The city of trees has always had lots of lawns.
oh yes, yes.
You had gone to Bigelow Junior High
That's right.
and Newton High School.
Yes.
What type of learning experiences did you have?
Well, my learning experience was not, although I did remember that certain teachers seemed to have a feeling for me as a pupil more than others. And I'm a very sensitive person, and any teacher that would raise their voice and kind of shout around and that kind of thing, I didn't like. But I did appreciate the person who would, I was a slow learner, and if anyone would take the time to work with me, it would be fine with a gentle voice and pleasant, you know, that kind of thing. But when it got to be blustery and that kind of thing, I just wouldn't cooperate too well.
Were grade school classes small? How many per class back then?
I would think quite fairly small. It must have been that's 25 in a class, something like that.
And when you came to Newton North,
Yeah.
probably there wasn't the variety of offerings that they have now.
No.
The graduating classes were considerably small.
And of course, in those days, I wasn't well because I had the sprue, and of course, so that I didn't. My early days were not too happy because I was, you know, going along with this kind of thing, disturbance that I had. So,
Because everybody refers back to the good old days as far as schools were concerned and of the quality of instruction.
yeah.
You know. And continuing our interview.
Well, speaking about Newton, I never mentioned that one thing I'm doing each week now, I go into Grace Church, which I'm a communicant of, and there is a group there called the Church Service League. And during the time they meet, they don't meet in the winter because of transportation problems and so on, but I play the organ for them in the chapel. And I do that in memory of my late mother, who was so active in that church. So that's one of the things that ties me to Newton. And then coming out here once a week to assist in the library and typing and things like that. That, I feel, is my connection with Newton, and I never would like to, break that up, because I feel that I'm still a part of Newton, even though I'm not really a resident anymore.
I really get that sincere feeling
Yeah,
that you're.
it's like returning to home. If I could find a place where I can come and go, like a place where I'm staying in Boston, I might sometime even feel like moving back here, but as far as I know, there's no such place like that.
Thank you again, Mr.
So,
Calkins.
Well, thank you.